Welcome. I'm Pastor Craig Miller at First Alhambra Methodist. Today we're continuing our series on transitions, the life of Joseph. Step 6, launch it. Let us open up with a word of prayer. Dear God, through Jesus we are made new. Even now on this day you call us to get rid of those things that keep us from loving others and to embrace joy, peace, faithfulness, hope, and grace. Give us the strength to admit our failures and to welcome actions and words that lead to life. Amen. As we've gone through our series, we've looked at these different steps. Accept it, mark it, shed it, create it, share it, and today, launch it. I really love this picture. This person really has launched as they're leaping from one rock to the other. And that's really what we're talking about today is how do we take what we have gathered as we're moving from one place of life to another and then actually make that leap of faith, that step across the void that leads us into a new beginning in our life. We've been basing this series on the book by Bruce Feiler, and there's a number of quotes I want to share with you from the book that helps remind us about what we're talking about when we talk about transitions. Feiler says, "A transition is a vital period of adjustment, creativity, and rebirth that helps one find meaning after a major life disruption." Think about for yourself any disruptions that you've had in your life. There are many different stages that we go through. For example, when we move out of our parents' house for the first time, whether we're going to college or into the military or into the work world, that's a major change that has happened. Or if we get married, that would be another transition, or have children, or starting a new job is another type of transition that we can go through. And as you go through life, there's many of these different changes. I remember when my daughter left for college, I was not expecting the huge transformation that would happen in my life during that time. And it was a great change for me and our family as she went to Boston and we were living in Nashville. And it meant we had to reorder our whole life and have a new way of thinking about how we interacted with each other. People who move out of the work world into retirement also go through great shifts in their thinking. Now, when they wake up, instead of going to the office, they have to ask themselves, well, what am I supposed to do with my life now that I don't have this work world anymore? So Feiler says that we really go through transitions over and over in our lives. And these different steps that we've been talking about helps us to go from one part of the transition to another. Let me share another quote. This came from one of the persons that he interviewed. "I was coming to life, but I definitely had to flip the switch. I didn't wait for things to be resolved. I went out and resolved them. Life is not about waiting for the rain to stop. It's about learning to dance in the rain." I really like that quote. Life is not waiting for the rain to stop. It's willing to go out and dance in the rain. And that's what Launch It is about. It's taking that step that moves you forward. It's very easy when we are in a time of transition to be listless, to just want to give up, to just want to say, what is life for anyway? What does it really matter what I do? But the step of launch says, no, I'm going to own my situation. I'm going to tell my story of where I'm at, and then I'm going to move forward. I'm going to dance in the rain. I'm not going to wait for the rain to stop. Here's some other thoughts about transitions. A transition is an adhesive and a healer. It takes something broken and begins to repair it. It takes something shaken and helps to steady it. It takes something shapeless and starts to give it shape. When we are in the messy middle of a transition, we have a lot of questions about our lives, questions about our relationships, wondering what we should do next. But a transition helps us to move out of that messy middle, to begin to shape meaning around our life, and to give us hope of where we're going in the future. So what is it that happens that moves you and lets you know that you are beginning this launch stage? Let me read the following. Father says, when I started this project, I was focused on big themes, the large-scale trends and social shifts that have left people feeling anxious, unsettled, off-kilter, off-schedule. But time and again in my conversations, I was caught off guard by small themes, the micro steps, and many patterns that seem to hint at larger truths. One of those is what I call the first normal moment. Again, I love that phrase, the first normal moment. And when I read that, it really struck me that during these 6 months of the pandemic, we've lost what it means to be normal. We don't know what a normal moment looks like anymore, or at least what a normal moment used to be like. A couple of weeks ago, I met my sister over at Paco's, a Mexican restaurant, and we sat on the outside patio. And as I went in, I was wearing my mask, and when I sat down, they said, now you can take your mask off, and my sister took off her mask, and we began to talk. I think that was the first normal moment I had had in a long time. I was somewhat jolted when the waiter showed up with a guard over his face and a mask as he asked us what food we had to order, and to remind me of what time we are in terms of the pandemic. But I think normal moments is something that we all long for. When we are in transition, what used to be normal has changed, and we have to look for new normal moments that gives us a start for our day, new purpose and meaning. Now, the story of Joseph is quite an amazing story, and we are going to take a look at some of the things as we recap what has happened so far. Earlier in our series, we talked about the ABCs of meaning. We talked about agency, being in charge of your life. So where we find Joseph today in our story, he has taken charge of his life. He is now, in fact, in charge of the whole Egyptian empire, in charge of managing things as the famine has now hit the land. But Joseph was able to navigate all the obstacles he had to go through, and to make the changes in his life he had to do so in order to find a direction in his life and not to give up. He had to take charge. He had to say, I'm not going to let things stop me. I'm going to move forward with what God is calling me to do. The next part of the ABCs of the meaning of life is belonging, having close relationships. And as we've read the story, we found out that Joseph now had a new family. And in fact, he was given a new name by the Pharaoh. So he had a new sense of belonging in terms of where he was in his life. And then the third ABCs of the meaning of life is cause, being part of something bigger than yourself. Joseph implemented a plan that saved Egypt and the surrounding countries from famine. So again, we see that Joseph was able to navigate his life and go through these major transitions because he had a cause, he had a purpose for himself. Now just think a minute about your own life and those ABCs of meaning. Where is it that you find agency? Where you find and feel like you are in charge of your life? You are able to make decisions that help you take the next step forward. What about belonging? Where's belonging for you? This has been a very challenging time for us in terms of belonging because we can't even gather in our faith community for worship at our church or get together for meetings. We were having a discussion the other day and were reminded that we couldn't actually get together in the lounge to have a meeting because it just wasn't appropriate yet at this time in terms of the concerns over the pandemic. But that thought really gets to this whole feeling of belonging, that it feels like we're not able to be in touch with each other. So I think this is a real challenging part of the transition we are going through right now. Think about how you can emphasize belonging. Maybe it's calling someone you haven't talked to for a long time. Maybe it's writing a note. Maybe it's doing a video conference or a Zoom meeting with a group of people at church, whatever it may be. Think about ways that you are emphasizing belonging and how you find belonging even within your own family at this time. And the third is cause. What is the cause that you are committed to? What are you doing that's making a difference in this world? It doesn't have to be a big difference. Maybe just simply helping out one other person is all that you need to do. That helps you have that sense of purpose and meaning in terms of cause. Well, let's take a look at Joseph's story in a little bit more detail. Now, the chapters that run up to the one I'm going to share with you in just a second talks about Joseph is now in charge of distributing food to all the different lands around Egypt because Egypt was the only one that had stored up food during the time of plenty. And it turns out that Joseph's brothers have come to Joseph 2 times to try to get food and to take it back to their father. And he's negotiated with them about bringing Benjamin to them, but he never revealed who he was. I encourage you, if you're interested, to go ahead and open up Genesis and read those chapters to get more detail about what happened. Well, let's take a look at the passage as we find it today. Genesis 45, verses 1 through 4. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." Here, Joseph revealed who he really was to his brothers. And as you can see, his brothers were a little bit worried because they wondered if he was going to punish them for what they had done to him. And we'll see next week what happened. And you probably already know that didn't happen. But we see here that as he revealed himself, there was a lot of questions going around the family as what does this mean that Joseph is still alive and that Joseph is in charge of everything that's happening in Egypt? What in the world is going on? But for Joseph, this was a great relief. He had been holding this truth out for years. His brothers had come back and forth from Judah many times, and he had held his breath and not said who he was. But now he couldn't take it anymore. He had to reveal who he truly was. This is part of Launch It as well. Letting people know who you really are, what you really need in your life at this time, and who you hope to become in this new beginning of your life. So think about your life today. How are you launching it? Who do you need to talk to let them know where you are in your life? What places can you turn to that helps you to reclaim your true self in terms of who God has created you to be? And how can you throw yourself into those things that bring you happiness and joy? It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could be a small thing that you do. Maybe going to garden or cooking a favorite meal. It could be just that new point of meaning, of doing something normal for the first time in a long time that helps you with where you are in your ability to share yourself with those around you. Well, let us close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And let's enjoy this music from Angel and Michael as we conclude our service today.
What a fellowship, what a joy divine, the